What's up, YouTube? This is Zerco, and today I'm bringing you another Redstone Explained video. What we'll be going over in this video is melon and pumpkin farms. So there are two main ways to set up melon and pumpkin farms, and I have them both displayed here. So I like to refer to them as horizontal and vertical farms, and the reason for that is because, as you can see, this farm is going to take up a lot more space on the X and Z axis, whereas this farm, you're going to stack it on top of itself, and it's going to take a lot more space on the Y axis. So what are the benefits for either one? Well, this one right here, the horizontal farm layout, the benefits are going to be over the course of time, it will be slightly more efficient. And of course, in terms of overall space, you will get more production out of this horizontal because while this is a horizontal layout, you can end up stacking it on top of itself over and over again and having multiple layers. So you're just going to get a lot more individual plants. And as you can see in this grid here, they're going to have more areas around them to grow the actual blocks on. So that's going to increase the chances on any given tick of it successfully growing a melon and or pumpkin. So with this design, the vertical design, the benefits of it are going to be it's going to be a little bit easier and arguably slightly less on resources to build it. And in terms of space, if you're working with a very limited space in terms of actual floor space, then this is definitely going to give you the most bang for your buck. Because you can build this thing all the way up to build limit if you wanted to, and you're going to get a whole lot of plants for a very, very small amount of space on the actual floor. So, what are the drawbacks of each design? So, with the horizontal design here, the drawbacks are going to be that it's going to take up a little bit more footprint on the floor. B, it is going to take actually a considerable amount more resources depending on your collection system. Now, what I have set up down here is the way that most people set it up, and it's just basically a floor of hoppers. Now, if you have an iron farm, that's no big deal. However, if you don't have an iron farm, maybe you're setting this up early game, you're setting up a trading hall before you set up an iron farm, this is going to be really resource heavy. Now, there are ways around that. You can have a hopper minecart track running around through here. I tend to shy away from hopper minecart collection systems whenever possible. Sometimes you can't avoid them, and it's just the best way to build a collection system. But when it comes to chunk loading and unloading, hopper minecart tracks are prone to having some issues over the course of time. Now, the drawbacks for this system, the vertical system, are going to be you're not going to have as many plants in the same amount of blocks necessarily. And as you can see, each plant only has two spawnable spaces, right? Whereas most of these have four. So that is going to lower the chances per tick of that plant actually successfully spawning a melon or pumpkin. So now that we have talked about some advantages, some disadvantages, and I'm sure that people can think of more along those lines, but those are the major advantages and drawbacks of these two systems. Let's get into building them. All right, so starting off with the horizontal design, what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to put a little cubby here, put some water down. That's going to be your starting area. Now, from the water block, Water will irrigate farmland for 4 blocks out in any direction. So what we're going to want to do is go 3 more blocks out on either side. So now you can see there's 4 blocks coming from the water block on that side, 4 blocks on this side, and this side, and now the last side. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take this and fill these all in. All right, so now that we got those filled in, what we're going to want to do is start placing our actual crops. So for this example, I'm just going to be putting pumpkin seeds, but just know that these are all interchangeable, whether it be pumpkin or melon. So I'm going to start putting them in a either or category here, where if I put one on this block, I'm going to skip a block and put one here. And then on the opposite side, I'm going to do the same thing, just at the alternating pattern. So a really easy way to do that is to just kind of go diagonally like this across 2 rows at a time. And then obviously you can't put one there on the water block, but that's fine. And we got all our crops down. So now this is going to be the part where some people are going to find it a little bit frustrating to build this top section here, but I have a couple of tips and tricks that'll help you to get it going along. So for this first row, we're going to want to put observers down, and the easiest way is to just target the plant, and you'll see the outline of the hitbox there. You're going to want to aim at the very top part of it, and then put it down like that. Now for this row, that's all you're going to do is just walk along, find that hitbox, and put them down. Now what we're going to do for the remaining rows is we're going to hop up on top of these observers, and we're going to walk across them like this, and this is going to make it way easier. So let's get this filled in. And all right, so we got them all filled in. So the next step is going to be, I like to use smooth stone blocks. I just like the block type. You can use whatever kind of solid block you want. We're going to put some solid blocks on top of each one of these observers. All right, so now what we're going to need is we're going to need note blocks. So let's grab these note blocks, and just like we did with the solid blocks, we're just going to fill these in on all of the gaps. All right, so we got this top layer done. Now we got to get the pistons in, and there's a reason why I waited until this point before getting the pistons in. So, a cool trick that you can do to make this easier is to get a trapdoor, just put it on the side of one of these observers here, and then you're going to be in this 1 by 1 or this 1 block space. Now, if you just try to put them like this, it'll just play the note block. So if you press shift, nothing's going to happen visually, but now the game is counting you as shifting, and now you can just slide around and put all of these pistons in. So not something that people would think about too often, but definitely a much easier way of getting these pistons in than going and trying to get the pixel perfect placement to get that piston facing down. So let's get the rest of these filled in, and we'll on to the next step. All right, so now that we got those pistons in, we are nearly done. Oh, we forgot one quick step. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have a trapdoor in this water block, and then we're going to want a light source on top of that trapdoor. I think it's fitting, since it's a melon and pumpkin farm, to make that light source a jack-o'-lantern. Now, the reason for that is because it's going to help these crops grow because of the lower light levels. The higher the light level, the higher the chances of the crop growing is. So since we have this overhang, it's going to be a lower light level in the middle there, and especially at night, it's going to be a low light level. So this light source block is just going to help make it so that these crops are going to be growing at their fullest potential all time. So the next step is going to be putting in our collection system. Now, if you're building this above the ground, you won't need to dig out any blocks here, but I like to build them level with the ground, and I don't really mind digging out the blocks. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dig down um, little holes on each of the corners here so that we know when to stop, or you can count it whichever way you'd like, and just start digging it out. Now you're going to get to this other side, and you're just going to make a perimeter around. I'm sure you guys are more than capable of digging out the space underneath this platform. All right, so now that we have this 2 block high area dug out underneath our platform, we're going to figure out where we want our collection system to come out. Now, if you're planning on building multiple of these stacked on top of one another, you can have them come out to the corner into an item elevator, or however you choose to do your collection system. If you're going to be building this on that kind of a scale, I'm assuming that you can probably figure out how to do the collection system yourself. If not, I will probably be doing a video on different ways of item transportation sometime in the near future, so just watch out for that. But we are going to just be taking our collection out to a regular double chest right out the middle here. So now, if you are building a hopper minecart track, you can do that by building up one more block, so it's only a 1 block high gap, and then building your minecart track. Just make sure that you're putting in enough powered rails for the minecart to get all the way through the track and back to your start where you're offloading the items. But today we're just going to be making a hopper floor. So put one hopper into the chest coming out like that, and then a line of hoppers that go and feed into that one. And now we're just going to take all of these back. So I'm going to stay with you for just a second here because there is an important thing that has to do with this block right here. So once you get to this next row, hoppers can sometimes not play nice with you when you're trying to go a little bit quicker. So when you get to this row here, obviously make sure to not put this hopper facing into this block. Otherwise, the items that go into this hopper are just going to get permanently stuck. So for this one right here, just face this hopper into that one and continue on. All right, so we got those all filled in. And now we can fill in our little corner holes here. And we are done. So you can see that if I set the random tick speed here to 10 times higher than its normal value, we get these to start growing up. Let's go a little bit higher than that. Do 100 times more. And of course, turn down that note block sound. And that's another thing that we can take care of if we'd like. Let's just go ahead and set that back down to normal. So if you want to take care of that note block sound, all you got to do is just place another line. Well, I mean, I suppose you only need a block on top of the note blocks, but to make it look nice and uniform, if I'm going to do that, I'll just put a whole nother row, a whole nother layer of solid blocks on top of the note blocks. So let's get that done real quick, and then we'll go back to the demonstration. All right, so I got layers on both of these, so we shouldn't be hearing those anymore. Now let's turn that random tick speed up again. And as we can see, these are all growing up. And we're starting to get pumpkins. Now, I wouldn't say that this design is 100% lossless, because every once in a while item entities can just be unpredictable. However, I would say that it is mostly lossless design. You can make it a little bit better if you want to surround this second Y level here with another set of blocks, like a ring going around this. It'll prevent item entities from sometimes coming out, shooting outwards like this. But I would say it's at least 95% lossless. The original person who made this design is a YouTuber by the name of Ilmango, one of the backbones of the technical Minecraft community, and we will be eternally grateful to him for this design because it is a spectacular design. And as you can see, we already got a whole bunch of pumpkins coming in. Now, we did have our random tick speed up, so that did cover a considerable amount of time of actual gameplay. But yeah, so this is the horizontal design, and let's jump into the vertical design. All right, so for this vertical design, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start with, of course, a water source block. Now, using that same rule, we can go 4 blocks out from each water block. So if we have a water block on either side, we can go 8 blocks. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Did I count that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. And then we're going to have another water source block right here. Now, out the back side here, I suppose it doesn't really matter which side's the back side in this example, but you're going to want to build 2 more blocks out with any building block that you want. You're going to want to put observers alternating every other block with solid blocks coming out the back of them. Now we are also going to need a piece of redstone dust because we're going to put a piece of dust in between each one of these solid blocks and on the corner here. Now we're going to put pistons here in the gaps between the observers, and that is pretty much done. So if we grab ourselves a hoe and till the land, we can go ahead and plant our pumpkins or melons, whichever you choose, and they will start growing up. And that's one layer done. Now, like we were saying before, the downside is you're going to have to build a lot of layers because, if you're using this design, one layer is only going to be 4 blocks. So you're obviously going to want more than just that. So you're going to want to go 2 blocks up here and a block over. This is going to be the bottom block of your next water source. You're going to want to go 1 up and 1 out on all directions, and that's where you can place your water source. And then you're going to want to come all the way out here, match it up. You can count it if you'd like, but if you already got 1 layer built, then there's not much of a point in counting. Now, you're going to need to put this block here. Now, if you're building this in survival, a good thing to do would be to remember at the end of each layer to just put that block there. Otherwise, say you have some scaffolding here, you're going to be going back down and up and down and up because you didn't put that block there. So just putting that there can be a time saver if you're building this in survival. So again, we're going to set the time to day real quick, and we're going to come out 2 blocks out the back here. Now, you don't necessarily need to put these in the same orientation, but I think it always looks better if you do. Uniformity in things like farms, I think, can actually look really nice if you choose to do so. So the super simple circuit here, just putting solid blocks in redstone and then pistons in the gaps. And that's another layer just about done. Now, remember to only put your actual plant blocks in front of the observers. If you put them in front of the piston, it's not really going to do much for you. So we'll build one more layer here just so that you get the idea. And then we will move on to the next step. So just like before, 2 blocks out the back and observers with solid blocks coming out the back of them. Redstone dust in the back, in the gap in the back, and pistons in the gap in the front. Don't forget your water source blocks. Give it a till and plant your seeds. All right, so there's going to be one additional step here that you're going to need. Now, in terms of a collection system, it's going to be much less in terms of iron demands. So what I like to do is just have a basic chest system here. You can expand this downwards if you'd like to have more chests. But all you're going to do is have one single line of hoppers running into that chest. Now, there's a slight problem here because these pistons could push these pumpkin blocks super far out. So what we're going to need to do, and this is where you're kind of making a trade-off of one material for another. So you're using a lot less iron, but you will need a bunch of glass. So what you're going to need to do is build up a glass wall here that the items cannot pass through, right? So that's going to make it so that these pistons are going to shoot out the pumpkin block. It is going to come out, hit this glass wall, can't pass through it, so then it falls straight down and goes right into the hoppers. So you can see that I built that up in the example from the beginning over here. And that's all you're really going to want to do, just to make it so that you get all of your items out of it. Now, something that people forget is they'll forget to put these blocks here, and they'll get items stuck on the corners here. And that actually happens a lot more than you would think it would, so just be careful to put blocks there as well. So that is the vertical design, and as I said before, you can stack this up as many as you want. If that's all you wanted was to see how to build these designs, then this video is pretty much over for you. If you would, however, like to stick around and hear me give a brief explanation of how these designs work, then let's get right down into it. All right, so both of these farm designs operate on the same basic principle. So what we have here is we have a pumpkin plant. Now, this plant is in a particular block state. Now, when it grows a pumpkin, it will be in a different block state. So if we change the tick speed here, this should grow a pumpkin any second now. All right. So now it's pretty easy to see that it's in a different visual state, and that should be enough of an indicator, but it is in a completely different block state in the actual game code. Now, we're using a wonderful block that the entire Minecraft community was so happy when this block came into the game, the observer block. Now, what the observer block does is it detects block state changes. So, if we have an observer block that is facing into this pumpkin plant here, what we can see, if we bring our signal around so we can see them both in frame at the same time, is when this plant changes state, this observer go ticks. So we'll see that again when it grows a pumpkin. Any second now. There we go. Now, kind of hard to see there because it happens so fast, but every time that this pumpkin plant goes from one state to another, it will change, it will trigger this observer, and this observer will send a 1-tick pulse. So now, the difference between these two farm designs is basically just where we are placing the observer. So as you can see in this farm design, we are placing the observer out the top of the plant and detecting its state change like that. So now the other part of it is we need a piston that will go into the block and push it. So if we just put another pumpkin here and we put a piston above it like this, we can see that if we power this piston, this block will get broken. Okay? So, and that works from any side. But as soon as a piston pushes that pumpkin block, and the same with melon blocks, it will break it. So now we have the two basic concepts that we need. Now we just need to figure out how to link them together. And that is what the difference between these two farm designs is. It's just the difference between linking together the power from the observer into the piston based on which direction the observer is facing the plant in. So as we said before, in this design, the observer is facing the plant from the top. So it's going to send its signal out into this block above it. Well, all right, we can catch that by putting a solid block there. Now, whenever this observer goes off, it will hard power this solid block. Now, in Java, what happens when this solid block gets hard powered is it will power this piston through what's called QC or bud powering. QC stands for quasi connectivity. I'm not sure how exactly that name got given to this game quirk, but that's what we call it. So we can see that this block will power this piston. All right, but there is a caveat there. When it is bud powered, bud stands for block update detection. So what that means is this piston will be powered, but it won't shoot off right away because it needs a block update. Now, to update a block, all you have to do is basically do something in a block directly adjacent to it. So that's where these note blocks come in. So this note block will get directly powered from this hard powered block when the observer sends a pulse into it. So what's happening all at the same time is this observer, so the plant grows a pumpkin. This observer detects the block state change. It'll send a pulse into this solid block, hard powering it. This block will then QC power this piston, but it will not fire. It will also simultaneously directly power this note block. The note block will in turn go off, and that will give a block update to this piston. The piston will say, oh, hey, I'm actually being powered right now, and it will fire. So all of that happens in that order, and then the piston will fire, and it will break the pumpkin block. So easy as pie, right? Now, with this collection system, it's working off of the fact that cropland, farmland, is not a full block tall. Now, hoppers can only collect things through a non-full block, slabs, or in this case, farmland, or a bunch of other things, but those are the most common ones. So, what happens when the pumpkin block gets broken? Well, it can't stay in this block space because it's being occupied by the piston head. So what it does is it shoots out to one of these adjacent blocks. Now, these adjacent blocks are all non-full blocks with hoppers underneath. So, the hopper will immediately pick up the item entity of the pumpkin through the non-full block. And then it just gets sent into our collection system here. And boom, bam, that's the whole system. Now, what we're doing is we're just modularizing it. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, that works for these 4 blocks here. Well, it also works for these 4 blocks, and for these 4 blocks, and these 4 blocks, and these, and so on and so forth. So we're interlocking a whole bunch of the same really simple system to make a much larger system that fits on this 9 by 9 grid, which is how much cropland can be irrigated by one water source block. So as you can see, when you try to look at it without really thinking about all the steps included in it, it might seem a little daunting at first. But when you take it like that, it's actually just a whole bunch of incredibly simple systems interlocked together to create one cohesive contraption. So then, if we take a look at the vertical design over here, it's the same thing, just on a slightly different scale. Now, what's happening here is we have our pumpkin plants, or melon plants, or whichever you choose. So we have our plants here. Now we have an observer facing into that plant. And again, that's going to detect the state change that happens when the plant grows a pumpkin or melon. Now it's going to shoot off a 1-tick pulse. So we're going to catch that just the same way. We're going to catch that pulse with a solid block. This block's going to get hard powered. Now, redstone dust can pick up power from a hard powered block that it's directly adjacent to. So it's going to power this piece of redstone dust. Now this piece of redstone dust is going to just send that power straight to the piston. The piston's going to fire, and the block gets shot off this way. So as you can see, it's the exact same system. This, this orientation might actually be simpler to understand than the horizontal orientation, but it's working on the exact same concept. The only difference is we don't have a note block here. So that's going to be the difference. Now, I had mentioned earlier that QC powering is only on Java Edition. So you might be asking, well, this isn't getting QC powered, so will this work on Bedrock? And the answer is the last time I checked, no. Um, that might be changed now, but the last time I played Bedrock, observers did not get updates from a plant growing. Now that might have been changed. This was a while back, but the last time I played Bedrock, that's how it was. And so the system would break because this plant would grow a pumpkin and it would never shoot off the observer. So I'm thinking that these farms are both going to be Java exclusives. I'm not 100% sure how melon and pumpkin farms really work on Bedrock, if they can be automated at all. Um, but yeah, these designs, these classic designs, will not work on Bedrock. And someone correct me if I'm wrong about the observers on Bedrock, which, like I said, may entirely have been changed. But I know this design here will for sure not work on Bedrock because QC powering is not on Bedrock and they have plans to never include it in Bedrock because it was originally a bug. But it became such a useful feature of technical Java Minecraft, and so the developers left it in for us. But so as you can see, these are much simpler systems than they may at first appear. All we got is an observer detecting when it grows, sending around some signal to a piston, and then pushing those into a collection system. All right, that has been Redstone Explained on Melon and Pumpkin Farms. My name is Zerco, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like if you did, subscribe, and comment down below. I will catch you next time, and see ya!